Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. It's time to go over some more fun things when it comes to the forum and the Reddit. It's always a wonderful place to go. And you know what my favorite thing is? I've actually been looking at a bunch of statistics over the last few days when it comes to the forum and also the War Thunder Reddit. And it turns out, basically since July, the amount of comments that are on the Reddit have decreased by 75% compared to the standard. So really odd. Maybe a lot of people just decided not to use it for some reason. Weird. The forum has obviously decreased as well because of, the switch over, but hopefully the idea is eventually it'll get back to what it is, but we'll see what goes on. So what are we talking about today? Well, there's just more pissed off people, because there always is, and that's just how this goes. The great thing is, we can actually see how many people are pissed off though, and it turns out there's not really a ton of them in the grand scheme of things, but it's fun to at least look at this stuff. We had a look at the French getting annoyed at pretty much everything as usual, the British getting annoyed at getting a vehicle, and then we also had a Australian who was annoyed and believed that Gaijin hated Australia because they added the M1A1 AIM to the American tech tree instead of the British one. And this is a huge problem that needs to be solved because it just shows the hatred that Gaijin has for the Commonwealth for some reason. So now, let's go on to the OG pissed off nation, which is of course Italy. Italy is one of those nations which actually I really enjoy playing in the game. Their aviation side of things, like their airplanes, are some of the funnest propeller aircraft in the place. But unfortunately, over the years, pretty much nobody has played Italy. It's one of those nations which no one ever touches, and the idea of adding these Hungarian vehicles in the Italian tech trees isn't just to try and fill out lineups and fill gaps, it's also to try and get a new set of people interested in the tech tree. And as some of you may have seen when it comes to comments or when it comes to, people chatting about it, there is a lot of hype around the Hungarians because they have some cool vehicles, including the KF-41. But unfortunately, when you have a problem in the brain, and this problem is that you have this certain set of rules that are in your head, and once those rules don't get followed by a different company which has completely different goals to you and has to take into account completely different variables, then you have to be annoyed. And that's what's happened when it comes to the Hungarians. So, first of all, there was a lot of staunch, what we call black shirts when it comes to the Italian community. There's only 5, 10, maybe 50 of them at most, but they got pissed off that Hungary was added to Italy because, of course, Italy has to be pure. It has to be, only indigenous stuff, apart from the M3A3, apart from the Shermans, apart from the M26s. Don't forget about all of those that have literally been in the Italian tree since its inception, by the way. The M26A1 was one of the first premiums that was added alongside the Leoncello. But don't worry about that, right? Don't worry about the fact that Italy has had those non-indigenous vehicles for a long time. Now, with these Hungarian vehicles, now that they're being added, now it's a problem, okay? Now it's a problem because we don't have our own vehicles in it, and it's no longer pure, and this is an issue. It isn't the fact that you can just not play these vehicles if you like them and not take them away from other people, but no, they can't exist in the Italian tree. It's not allowed because it's not Italian. What a wonderful mindset. Then, the straw that broke the camel's back when it comes to these crazy people was that they added some Hungarian helicopters to the tree. After adding the Hungarian army stuff to the ground, they've added some helicopters. They've added a premium, the Mi-24P, and the Mi-24D and Mi-24V. Now, the P actually will help Italy a lot because they don't have a premium heli right now. And the other two, for some reason, got removed, probably because nobody bought them because they're Italian helicopters. Then they added the Mi-24D and V to give people other options. Instead of playing the Italian helicopters, they're copy-paste helicopters. They probably took literally zero amount of work to be able to put into the game, apart from a camouflage, which, let's be honest, is not as much work as completely creating a new model for a vehicle. So you've added these in, right? The good old Mi-24s. But this is not fair. This is the breaking point when it comes to the tech tree, because these are vehicles that just should not be there, because there's a ton of domestically made Italian helicopters and they should be in the game, even though most of them are either designed for ship or sea warfare, or they're designed when they only have machine guns and rockets. But this is the problem, okay? This is the issue, right, that has going. They decided to add in these Soviet helicopters instead of the Italian ones. Where have we seen this argument before? Ah, yes, it literally had it last week with the T-90. Just because something is added to the game does not mean that other things are being or not being worked on. Just because you can only see 10% of the iceberg does not mean that the 90% doesn't exist. I worry about people like this who have to look into mirrors and not see the world behind the mirror. Do they think the world behind the mirror does not exist? Right? Just because you don't see what is in the shade doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Of course, this is the same argument that was talked about when it came to the British T-90. For some reason, because the British T-90 was added, the light vehicles for Britain weren't being worked on. Or, you know, there wasn't any other vehicles that are being worked on, even though they specifically said in the dev blog that they were working on them. We're having a similar scenario when it comes to the Hungarian helicopters in the Italian tree. Just because they've added them doesn't mean that Italian helicopters are not being worked on, no matter how much you believe they're not or they are, right? Because at the end of the day, you have no idea what is being worked on the other end. And that has to be understood. The other thing is this perceived notion that everybody is with the idea that they should remove Hungarian vehicles, or that this should even be a talking point, right? So let's have a look at the posts. You have two posts, I'll stick them in the description. One of them is by a community contributor, always an interesting and fun person, and then the other one is just by a lackey of said person. So exactly the same community. There's about maybe 50 to 100 of them, as I said, which actually do stuff like this. And then if you have a look at this post here, it has 218 votes. 218 votes. That's how many people care about this. I will once again remind you, when it comes to War Thunder, there are hundreds of thousands of players. 200 people. That's it. So with this, you know what's hilarious? With these 200 people, if you want to use it as a representative size of everything, you know what's funny? At this point of recording of the video, the vote is remove the needless Hungarian helis from the telly tree. No or yes. Yes has 47%, no has 53%. So the majority of these people who are supposed to be invested in this actually agree the Hungarian heli should be in the Italian tree. Even with all of the post basically gaslighting you, telling you that this shouldn't be happening. It's just nuts, like what we're dealing with right now. And I don't know what has caused it. I don't know whether I've just been paying more attention, but I feel like with the 4 separate dev servers, it has just given a bunch of people ammunition to just go nuts. And the problem is, as we talked about previously, a lot of this comes from private communities which then try and push their agendas in the public. We talked about this in the French video. You can literally, on any dev blog, you could get 20 or 30 people together and you could push the narrative. The OH58D, the top post has 8 likes, and then the next post after only has 1. All you would need is 10 people to get together to upvote a post. There you go, you're now on the top of it. Absolutely nuts, and then it goes from there. Then, when you come to the visual effects, the top post has 56. The second one has 19. So all you need is 20 people to get together, and on top of that, you'll have the natural progression of everybody else, and there you go. You now control the narrative of the whole thing. 20 people, that's it. when it comes to these things. And that has to be understood. Just get it that when it comes to these social media platforms, you are looking at a vast minority of the player base. The vast minority of people use the forums. The vast minority of people use the War Thunder Reddit. I know it's really nice to look at the big numbers, right? So on the War Thunder Reddit, oh look, there's 400,000 people who subscribe. Right? 400,000 people. But as anybody with a brain would know, that doesn't mean 400,000 people are interacting all the time with it. As I said, right now, when it comes to it, over the last few months, pretty much over the last 2 months, there have been, on average per day, 500 to 600 comments. That's it. And remember, that can come from actual multiple people, right? If you have a look at posts per day, on the Reddit specifically, it is between 200 to 300 posts. That's it. From 400,000 people, that's what it is. You get more interaction on the Tech Hub than that. A place which is a private Discord with only about 10,000 people on it. And that's where we're seeing narratives being born. Places like private Discords. And then when you go to the forums or when you go to the Reddit, you see these manifest, and then guess what? Nobody agrees with each other because, as I've talked about for many years and tried to get through people's heads, everybody has massively different opinions when it comes to the game, and you can't get everybody to agree on things, which is why it is much better to take in all the feedback and then go from there and basically try and work out which feedback fits with the stats and then go forward with it. The reason why Hungary is being added to Italy for helicopters is the fact that it's much easier to copy-paste a vehicle than to build a new one, even if a new one is being made. They've also shown that people aren't that interested in Italian helicopters. This is another part. The research on these things, using the internet, using archives to find information about these vehicles, is not the same as adding them to the game. The research part is actually the easy part. It is easy to scour the internet. It is easy to look for images. It is easy to be able to even go to archives to be able to get all of this information. Most of it, once again, you can do online nowadays, because it's all digital. That's the easy part. The hard part is building it through creating a 3D model, then making sure that it's ready for the game with all of the different factors it can have, then historically checking it, obviously, to make sure it's all set up, and then balancing the damn thing after it. That is so much harder than just researching stuff. And once this is understood, then we can maybe get somewhere. This isn't even putting in demand of product, just because you have 50 people who want something to happen, which, remember, most posts have maybe 20 to 50 people who are pushing them, at most. If you have that many people pushing different things, right, that is not equivalent to actually making money. We know how much some of these models cost, up to $10,000 for some of the aviation ones, and it will be more for stuff like the naval ones. For helicopters, they are definitely, obviously, kind of all over the place when it comes to costs and also the copy-paste nature of them. But the fact is, demand has to be there, and demand is not there for the Italian stuff. That's why they're adding the Hungarian stuff. And that's why they'll add more sub-trees to Italy. Because even though they put so much time and effort into the naval, into the helis, into the ground, into the aviation, that they didn't have to, people still don't care. They just don't care about the vehicles. I think they should. There's some really cool stuff in Italy, and it's really fun to play. It's fantastic to play, but they just don't care. So, how about you just let this stuff happen, right? Let this stuff go into the tech tree so you can open up the tech tree to new people. So you can basically say, hey, we've got this added thing. If you want to play them, you can. You don't have to play them. You don't have to put them into, your areas. And then maybe that means that you'll get more people enjoying the vehicles that you love, enjoying the vehicles that are there to, have a bit of fun with. Because if they're playing the Hungarian vehicles, they're also going to play the Italian vehicles on the side. Then you'll get more people talking about Italy, more people going through it. That's what happened with the South Africans when it came to Britain, and the Finnish with the Swedish exactly the same. You just had more people who got to enjoy more content in the same tree. and I don't know why people are against this. The only reason must be just some nationalistic, stupid bias that just does not need to exist in video games, and it is just nuts. At the end of the day, in order to make things as easy as possible for people to research and also for people to get, that should be prioritized when it comes to like player bases. None of this nationalistic rubbish which I see constantly. Nationalism is one of those things that can be very positive, but in this way, in order to diminish other countries and also their stuff, in order to favor your own, is a problem we've had for many decades in real life, and it's very sad to see it move over to a video game. Just stop listening to these crazy people. They don't represent anything. They don't represent the community. They don't even represent the nation that they say that they represent. Have your own ideas, have your own thoughts, and anybody who says that they are the voice of a collective, stay away from them. They are dangerous as all hell, especially when it comes to stuff like this. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Brendan Quinn, Vilneus, Character Fuel, Juan the Panda, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Merciless Reaper, Orangetail, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Moxie, B. Young, Bareen, Peter Grayling, Alan Hacker, Sem Alslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R., and also Lafouche for supporting the channel.